Some agents talk about success, others chase it, but only a few are willing to climb.
Welcome to Mine Renovation Nation, brought to you by Red Maples, a real estate performance advisory service for small multifamily real estate investors. I'm Nathan Bush, and on each episode, I share with you lessons I've learned from my friends, mentors, and personal journey in real estate. I've designed each show to inspire, motivate, and equip you for your own investing path. Remember, if you're watching live, drop questions in the comments and I'll address as many as I can. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more actionable insights. Visit www.nathanbushmba.com for free resources to help you if you're a real estate investor looking to grow your business. Does it appear that there's been a flood of investors working to acquire deals in your market? With the popularity of flipping increasing and real estate dreams being built with shows like Flip or Flop, Good Bones, Hometown, it appears to be more and more people are finding real estate investing as an avenue for wealth building. In this episode, I'm going to unpack 4 ways to overcome investor saturation and help you navigate building your real estate investing business. Guys, I'm Nathan Bush. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. Innovation in a crowded real estate market. What are we going to do? I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, but in addition to the overcrowded and oversaturation that is going on inside of the real estate market, you have got inflation of construction costs that are going on right now. Inflation of construction costs. And one of the things that I have noticed with the construction costs, have you guys seen this? It's not just the labor that has gone up over the last couple of years in real estate investing. It is also the material costs that have gone up. It's the insurance cost. If you have your own contracting crews, insurance has continued to skyrocket. This has been a thorn in the side, if you will, a burr in the saddle, and it's been a challenge. In addition to these construction costs, you guys are dealing with rate increases right now, interest rate increases. And so, yeah, they've come down a little bit, but we still have the interest rate debacle that's going on right now, and it's hurting the real estate investing business. And so you're not just dealing with oversaturation and construction costs, but you're also dealing with these crazy interest rates that are making it more difficult to put deals together. You're trying to get numbers to work, and you're not getting those deals to go together. You're also dealing with the lack of available inventory. You've got places like Zillow now and other online sites that are aggressively marketing to real estate investors, and you have Facebook groups that are oversaturated. How many of you guys that are online right now, how many of you guys are in investor Facebook groups? And when you see a post that comes out, they get like 30 or 40 emails of people who are interested in buying that particular property from investor to investor. If that's you, if you're online right now, would you give me a thumbs up, a like, or some type of sharing of the post just to let me know that you're in these Facebook groups as well and you're seeing the same things that I'm seeing? That can be frustrating for a real estate investor because you want to jump on deals as soon as they're available. And then lastly, your marketing costs have increased. It's not the same to be able to get in front of a home seller like it used to be, or a apartment seller who's got a distressed asset. Those marketing costs continue to go up, whether you're running Facebook ads or you're trying to run ads with direct mail. Cost of postage has gone up. These things, I mean, heck, if cost of eggs have gone up, everything's gone up, right? So we're dealing with a market that is working. The forces are working against you as an investor. That's the best way that I can absolutely say this. And there are 4 strategic ways that you can build strategy into your business. However, The challenge is that when you build that strategy into your business, you got to do it in a specific way. And so I'm going to share with you 4 tangible, different creative strategies that you can use in order to strategically position your business. Now, what I am not talking about today is negotiating harder. Okay. When we're looking at strategic ways to be able to build our business, we're not talking about negotiating harder. That don't work. When things get to oversaturation parts and you're trying to grow a real estate investing empire, you're trying to build your nation, right? You're not going to do it around negotiating harder. There's tons of negotiating tips and tactics and tricks out there, but if it's oversaturated and there's a lot of investors competing on the same deal, that means demand for the product is high and the supply is low. What happens to price? It goes up. That's economics 101. So negotiating harder is not going to get you more wins in the real estate arena. Okay. The second thing is it's not networking more. I know that networking is an important part of real estate, and you can go out and be a part of a lot of different networking groups, but being a part of a lot of different networking groups, guys, is not going to fix an oversaturation problem. Because the more people that you network with, the more you're finding there's people looking to buy deals. And so you're just in this position where there's more people looking to buy than there is available inventory. And so the concept of just networking more is not necessarily a way to be strategic about the development of your business. This is also not, this is the 4 ways that don't work. These are 4 strategies that you're not going to employ in an oversaturated, crowded investor market. All right. The third one is spending more on marketing or secret sauce courses. How many of you guys have ever paid for a real estate investing course? If you're like me, I have. So you're not out of the realm of possibility. Thanks, David Hayes. I appreciate you joining me online and giving me a like to the question earlier. So it's not spending more on marketing, and it's not secret sauce coursework. Yes, you can invest in courses, and courses will help you get a basic understanding, but they're not, these courses that you're investing in, guys, they're going to be somebody else's strategy. And think about this. If they're selling that course and it's a good course and they're doing a good job, don't you think they should be selling a lot of people on that course, enough people to saturate a specific strategy that will maybe or potentially keep you from making the type of margins that you deserve on that real estate? Just a thought, right? So the last thing that you are not going to do is that you're not going to just sit on the sidelines right now either, because you're a real estate investor and you want to invest in real estate, but you don't have a good strategy to compete in an oversaturated market. I've got a solution, okay? We're going to talk about that solution. Quick question for you. Our government right now has got a Department of Efficiency that's going through and hacking the budget in a variety of different ways. That can't be good for an economy that's needing to go on right now. And that definitely can't be good for your real estate investing business. Who knows what's going to happen with interest rates and the whole 9 yards. But you got to have some type of foundation that you can be creative. Okay. So I know that the thought processes out there that you could just sit on the sidelines. I don't think that that's a good thing to do either. There's no better time to buy real estate than right now, or so many people wouldn't be investing all of their energy and effort in trying to find good deals that are out there. So what are we going to do? How are we going to compete in this market? What are you specifically going to do? Well, guys, there are 4 ways to develop a creative strategy in real estate investing. What I did was I adopted this framework from a very intelligent person. His name is Adam Barden, and he wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review in 2019, and it still applies to creativity when it comes to strategy, okay? So strategy needs creativity is the title of that article, and here's what he wrote about. He wrote 4 different ways. I'm going to get them all out there for you. The first way is contrast. Second way is combination. Third way is constraint. And the fourth way is context. What do I mean by all of this? I'm glad that you asked. Let's look at contrast. When we're developing a strategy, we want to look at contrast. Like two contrasting colors might be black or white, right? They're contrast. They're opposite of each other. Something that is contrast might be the real estate industry and the automobile industry. Those are two separate things. They contrast each other. When we're talking about contrast, I want you to think about the concept of the case study of Netflix, right? Back in the day, Blockbuster ruled the roost in the video department. You've heard this story a number of different times, and in came along Contrast, Netflix. It was something different. It was revolutionary. And this is like, this is kind of like being stuck in your old way versus the new way of doing things. But contrast is really just different. If the problem is that people are paying late fees and they're not returning videos on time and they don't want to pay those late fees and streaming services are coming down the road, you've got to look at a way of positioning your business so it contrasts with the current market. You look at the stock market approach, right? They're started off with stocks, but then to contrast the stocks, there were mutual funds. It's a group of stocks. It's now different. It's not the status quo of what is available and what's out there. So looking at your strategy, you're looking for positioning yourself with contrast. There are some common mistakes when it comes to getting contrast in your strategy. Number one, assuming traditional models will always work. So if you're thinking about contrast, but you're comparing one industry to another, and in doing so, you're trying to model something that's dinosaur, that's not going to be disruptive. It's not going to be the opposite of what's going on. It's not going to be light bulbs versus candles, guys. You're going to be just doing the same dinosaur market approach in one industry and another, and that might not be as revolutionary is what you're looking for in a strategy. Okay. So contrast is the big one. The second mistake that people make when they're trying to contrast things is they overcomplicate things. They either do that through technology or whatnot, and that can be extremely costly and it can be confusing for the person trying to buy from you. So if you're going to develop a strategy around contrast, make sure that you're not overcomplicating it. And then lastly, regulatory missteps. Okay. Just because one industry does things a certain way and you start to apply those things to the real estate industry, or you're going to disrupt something in the real estate industry. Like, for instance, I think I'm only going to lease to people with children. Okay, so I'm going to put out all of my ads with family members that have children. Well, there's rules and regulations against that. And so if you're trying to contrast and be disruptive, you also have to be aware of the laws so that you don't get yourself into big trouble when you're building in a specific market. Okay. So we talked about contrast. That's the first strategic advantage that you can have. I'm going to give you an example of contrast in just 1 second, but I also want to talk about the second one. Second strategy and creative approach is combination. Okay, combination. And I mean, if you think back to even Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs said that just connecting things together can make you a millionaire, and that's called combination. And so your ability to connect ideas, one thing and another, combine them together. For instance, Elon Musk, controversial as he is right now anyways, politically, he created renewable energy with solar and battery, thus revolutionizing the home energy usage, right? There was a market he was able to come in and disrupt from just combination. He's combining solar and battery power, puts those together, and now we can install those inside of houses for renewable energy. Think about combination like this. You have iced tea and you have lemonade. You put them together, and what do you got? An Arnold Palmer, something new that you can sell, right? So combination is a key when it comes to developing your strategy, especially in small multifamily, especially if you're looking to do something disruptive and find a niche or a market that's not oversaturated right now. Some mistakes to avoid when you're doing this combination. Number one, underestimating the cost, right? If I have to buy a 2-liter of iced tea and a 2-liter of lemonade in order to sell one glass and the rest is wasted, that's not a good combination strategy. And so you got to avoid the mistake of underestimating the cost. The second mistake that we've got to avoid that's a big problem when you're looking at combination is over leveraging, right? Borrowing too much money in order to put two things together can be a major problem for you. And I just want to warn you against that strategy mistake that you can make. And here's the third one. And guys, a lot of these mistakes I've made trying to put together businesses. So I'm just trying to give you some idea. I've worked in a number of different real estate businesses within the industry. I've helped investors grow to over 5,000 doors, and I've watched that happen in different. One investor, for instance, I'll give you a perfect story. Okay. He thought rental real estate. I know a lot of small multifamily guys were doing Section 8 rentals. And so he went to Section 8 and he bought 200 homes within the St. Louis market, okay? He filled up all these homes. His thought was, I'm going to fill up every home with Section 8 rentals. That way I'll have a portion of my rent always guaranteed. Major catastrophe. Logistical issues, operational issues, all within the Section 8 department with overseeing those homes. This particular person grew so many Section 8 residents in the United States, they actually ended up on the news for having different challenges with their rental properties. Now, wasn't anything I did from a management perspective. This was years ago, and it was in organizations that I worked with, and they were navigating these challenges with the Section 8 department because they had so many Section 8 tenants. And they didn't have an established business. It was a new business that they were building and being innovative. So I have to caution you that there's a lot of these mistakes that I've already been a part of or have made in the past. And so I'm trying to warn you when you're trying to build a strategy on whether these things work. So in combination, don't combine the things that don't work. Focus on some things that will work, all right? Last one is poor vendor management. You can get into trouble when you're trying to combine two different ideas if you can't manage the relationship of vendors that aren't used to working with those two things being combined, especially if you're being innovative. All right. I want to talk to you about the next strategy approach, which is constraints. You can make significant money looking at the constraints in an industry. For instance, the biggest example that comes to mind is Uber, right? Or Airbnb, where there's constraints in the market, right? You have to have taxi licenses. You have to have all of this stuff. And then you come in and you look at the constraints and you play your pieces like chess pieces, right? Certain pieces can only move certain directions. And so you're strategic about the pieces and places that you're putting in because you're navigating constraints that other people can't unlock. And so same thing with Airbnb. Remember, they started by renting air mattresses in an apartment and sharing the cost of their living space by doing so. And then they grew into the juggernaut that they are today. You can be disruptive like Uber or Airbnb in a market and find massive amounts of value in real estate, but you got to play your pieces like a chess master, okay? Now, there's some mistakes to avoid when you're being innovative around constraints, okay? First mistake is not having an exit strategy. These constraints are constraints for a reason. And so if you're trying to navigate them or work around the constraints that exist, it's important that you guys have a good exit strategy. In your real estate investing right now, what is your exit strategy? If you're thinking about it and you're trying to help yourself overcome some of the challenges in your constraints that you have right now, what are they, right? So what is your exit strategy, but what are your constraints? And not having an exit strategy is a major challenge if you're trying to disrupt with constraints. The second is being too frugal, right? When you're dealing with constraints, you have to spend money to fix that. You have to overcome those constraints for a reason, and so they're going to require a little bit more of an investment. And then number one way that you can make a mistake when you're dealing with constraints is burnout. You can't burn out because you're working against the grain, okay? They're constraints for a reason, and you're overcoming them in your strategy, but you can often have a major burnout that happens. And then the last way, so we've talked about the contrast version, contrasting two different things, two different industries, two different whatever. We talked about combination. We've talked about constraints. And now we're going to talk about context. So if you're going to build a strategy, and it's going to be a creative strategy in real estate, you can do it around context. So I want you to think about it like this. I worked in real estate for 15 plus years. And then one of the roles that I ended up taking in my career was going to work for a hearing aid organization. Okay. When I made that shift, one of the things that I brought with me from the real estate industry was the concept of the resident guest card. The resident guest card is simply this: when a tenant calls in, you ask them specific questions and you write it down on a physical guest card. This trains your leasing staff to be able to ask all of the right questions on one card before the person specifically tours the property. You take that guest card and you upload it to your CRM. Many of you guys have a lot of automated systems now that automatically do this guest card process. But back in the day, we used to physically write out the guest card. We'd have stacks of cards on our desk. They'd be like this high. Of all the different leads and prospects that we had going on. And we'd have to enter those prospects into the CRM system or the computer, but we'd manually hand do it, okay? That concept of the guest card I took into the healthcare industry, and I trained front office staff using the concept of a guest card. So that when a person answered the phone, they would answer the phone the same way we did in the real estate industry to gather the leads as they came in. It was revolutionary and innovative in the healthcare industry, and it helped us go from 7 locations, 7 hearing aid retail practices, to over 47 hearing aid retail practices. That is context. Okay, your ability to be able to see things that can be used in one context or another context and implement them within an industry. Okay, the analogy for this to kind of get your mind around this concept of context, because we're going to go deep into these 4 different areas today, and I'm going to help you better understand these with actual case studies of real estate investors who've done each 4 of these different categories. So you can do this yourself. Okay, the analogy is buying an old car from a famous person, fixing it up, and reselling it to somebody in your network or market. Okay. That's the same concept of a real estate investor going in and finding a famous person's home and then renovating that home and then selling it as, this used to be Nellie's home. This used to be whatever, Kanye's home, whatever, right? The same concept, the same analogy works from one concept to another. That's the concept of context. You can take one thing out of one place and put it in another. Now, there's some mistakes that come with this, okay? You can overestimate the market, thinking the market's going to adopt something from one industry to another, or moving between things, not just contrasting it, but actually taking one concept from one industry to another. You can overestimate or underestimate the costs of doing this, right? Because it's in one area, there's nuances to every industry. There's nuances to every work that you're going to do, whether it's in one category or another, that can make it difficult, and things have to be adjusted and changed. Now, the wonderful benefit of AI that's out there right now, I'm touching on all the things that are hot. What are the benefits of AI that's out there when it comes to context is that AI can actually help you estimate some of those costs. And so you can utilize prompts in AI to be able to better understand how one thing will fit into another thing. Just as a side note, I've done that with ChatGPT, utilizing different areas of our business, looking at whether one type of process or system or whatever approach will be similar that we could implement in another part of our business system or approach. And you just give it the prompt and tell ChatGPT to answer those things. And that was the outcome that you can actually estimate and look at within your business. The last mistake that you want to avoid when you're talking about context strategy, okay, is not considering the timing. Some industries aren't right to be disrupted at that time. If you tried Uber 20, 30 years ago, it wouldn't have been at that time. The internet was in its infancy. So Uber couldn't have used the concept of combining the internet with the taxi service that it was trying to do and do it around the constraints that it was trying to innovate within. It wouldn't have been able to make it work 20, 30 years ago. But as they progressed, maybe I'm getting old and maybe it did launch 20, 30 years ago. I got to do a little bit more research on that. But you understand the concept. A long time ago, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, this wouldn't have even been feasible because the internet was still in its infancy. Okay, so it would have been bad timing. Good idea, bad timing. So that can be a major mistake that you want to avoid when you talk about this whole concept of context. All right, you guys got it? You got the 4 ways to innovate down. Now, let me show you some examples of real estate investors who have done just that. You guys might not have even heard of some of these people, but they are, you can go look them up. I got the resources for you to look up here. So here, contrast, right? So contrasting the industry norms. We'll talk about Mr. Bates pioneered the tokenization of real estate assets in 2018, I guess it was. What he did was he digitized ownership in a specific resort. So the way that this worked is very similar, like fractional shares of a stock. And what he did was he went in and digitized through blockchain the ability to buy fractional shares of the Aspen Resort. And that was in 2018. Okay. Today you're looking at being able to co-fund or buy and invest in real estate assets. And that's a disruption in the marketplace right now. But this gentleman said that it further through blockchain technology allowed you to buy digital shares within the St. Regis Aspen Resort. So that's what he did. And you can do something similar too. You got to work through the strategy of contrast in your business. And if it's not the strategy of contrast in your business, like it was for Mr. Bates, then maybe it's the strategy of combination. And so merging diverse different concepts, this gentleman, Sam Gordon, an Australian real estate investor, what he did was he combined property renovation and the refinancing strategy. So he started at 19. He purchased undervalued inhabitable properties. He renovated them and then refinanced them based upon the increase in value. The combination enabled him to be able to build a portfolio of 76 properties that were valued at $43 million by the age of 34. The pioneer of what we know as today is the Burr method. But before this gentleman, Sam Gordon, the Burr method didn't exist. And so it's incredible when you can utilize the combination of certain things, put two things together, fix and flip and refinance strategy that investors were doing. He was able to scale and grow even faster. And it was a strategy that worked well for him. Let's look at the next strategy, an investor, right? So if it's not contrast and combination, maybe you're an investor where your strategy is best through constraint. And if you look at the limitations that this gentleman had to deal with here, if you look at his limitations, Douglas Aguilar turned a modest 760 pounds into 78,000 pounds by 21. Financing, what he was doing was facing financial constraints. So he lived in a storage unit. So he wasn't making much money at the time. He lived in a storage unit. He minimized all of his expenses. Okay. He called Douglas Aguilar the father of the tiny house movement. He lived in a container. I think there was something about Elon Musk living in a container at one point too, to minimize all of his expenses. And he acquired undervalued properties that he persisted and found through cold calling. So he used to be a cold caller for a different industry. And then he put that in place with being able to find undervalued properties through cold calling. Okay. So not a major innovation, but there was some constraints that this gentleman had, and he used the constraints from what he knew and the constraints that other investors wouldn't do, like make cold calls and do the proper amount of research. And that enabled this gentleman to be able to grow his wealth significantly by age 21. Okay. So if constraints not your thing, and I get it, maybe combination's not your strategy or contrast is not your strategy, you got to have a strategy, right? So you got to pick one. And the fourth way that you might be able to do this is through that context. Okay. So through the context. And a investor strategy that utilized context was Bo Belmont. He acquired a Malibu property that was previously owned by Kanye West. Recognizing the unique context of the high-profile yet distressed asset, this Belmont firm purchased the property at a significant discount with plans to restore it, aiming at substantial returns for resale. What does that mean? Well, what was the context? This Bo Belmont, he was in with celebrities. and he understood the presence that celebrities was having online and the movements that were being created. And he was part of the marketing movement of utilizing real estate, and not real estate, but utilizing celebrities as influencers for marketing campaigns. And so he took one context from one area, put it in a different light and a different life for himself. And what did we have then? Lo and behold, we had the result of contextual innovation. Guys, we covered a lot of stuff today. Did you learn something? Are you able to implement a new strategy now? I can't tell you how much I thank you guys and appreciate you for being a part of this Mind Renovation Nation show. Every Friday at noon, you guys are here. You do an amazing job, and I can't thank you enough for being a part of the movement, the audience, and the questions and what makes this show possible. So thank you very much for being a part of all of that. I also want to make sure I thank my sponsor, Red Maples, your go-to source for performance real estate advisory services for small multifamily rentals. If you have a small multifamily rental and you're in need of property management that thinks like this, right? That's the whole point of the show. I'm sharing with you an understanding that our property management service goes through this process of working through the different strategy approaches in order to make investors more profitable. We're working on your behalf in order to be able to do some of this stuff. Now, some of it is tried and true practice principles that we know that yield certain results. Part of it is that partnership approach on your strategy that you're trying to improve upon in an industry that is ripe for innovation and disruption. Remember, there's 4 different strategies, guys. We have combination, we have context, we have got the constraint, and we've got the combination, context, constraint, and contrast. That was the 4. I had to remember them off the top of my head. I'd do a much better job for you next time. Contrast, combination, constraint, and context. Those are the 4 different models for strategic thinking. Which one do you feel most comfortable with? That's the question I have for you today. Before we leave today's show, before we end, which one do you feel most comfortable innovating your rental business with? Which one do you feel most comfortable innovating your investment business with? And those are 2 separate different things, right? So which one are you going to implement right away? What made the most sense today? If there was a case study, story, or practice today that resonated with you, go ahead and type it in the comments. That lets me know that you are here today. I will make sure that you get a special gift on my behalf just for being a part of the show. And guys, that Renovation Nation brings us again to the end of another episode. I'm Nathan Bush, your guide on this journey of real estate business growth. Remember, just like plants need the right air, soil, and care, our minds need the right environment to build a life of purpose, passion, and growth. Don't forget to get your citizenship to Mind Renovation Nation. Here's what you're going to do. Subscribe to my email list. Go over to nathanbushmba.com and subscribe to the email list. Then you're going to hit subscribe on YouTube. When you've done those 2 things, you're going to share this show and tag me in it. That'll be the reminder. That'll be the easiest way for me to get hold. And I'll give you more good stuff that will help you accelerate your career as a real estate investor. So we've got lots of tools and resources the team has helped me put together. But if you want to join the citizenship, those are what you got to do. Join me next time for a little more insights, inspiration, of course, a little bit of that nation-building spirit that drives us to create a community united by shared values, purpose, and a commitment to leaving a lasting legacy. Until then, let's keep building and growing and lead more than 25,000 souls to a life of values-based investing. In our journey of mind renovation, we're often talking about personal growth, ethical leadership, and making impactful choices. Values-based investing is an extension of that same philosophy. It's about being a steward not only of our finances, but of our values and vision for the future. Signing off from the heart of St. Louis, let's stay blessed, stay inspired. Remember, every day is a chance to renovate your nation. Thanks, guys.